Absolutely. Well, now what I want to show you is a couple of ideas that I've worked out for myself, give me wonderful shortcuts, enabled me to save time, do questions more accurately, and so on. And a good shortcut that not many people know about is this 1 over x button. Now on the Texas, it's the fourth row and second button from the left, and on the HP, it's the second row, sorry, second button from the right on the Texas, and on the HP, second button from the left. And it can be used very powerfully when you're doing lots of divisions. So for example, look at this exercise. Here we've got the formula for the critical t-value. This is used in hypothesis testing, and it gets measured eventually against the t-tables. It is a formula that tells us that x minus u, the sample mean that you've just taken, minus or compared to the original historical value mean, divided by the standard deviation of the sample, which itself is divided by n to the power 0.5, which is the square root of n, will give you the critical t-value. Now, S divided by the square root of n is something known as the standard error. So what you're doing here is you're comparing the sample mean against the historic and dividing that or reflecting it in terms of the numbers of standard errors. And on the right-hand side, we've got a little example. T equals 8 minus 5 divided by 20 divided by the square root of 6. So you could sort of start from the left-hand side, open brackets 8 minus 5, close brackets, divide by, and now you say to yourself, hang on, how do I do this thing? And actually, a better way is to start on the right-hand side. So let's all do this together, those of you who want to. So make sure your screens are cleared. And let's put in first 6, and then turn that into the square root. So you need to find the square root button. On the HP calculator, it's the blue function y to the x on the left-hand side. So you get your square root, and that should be 2.4495. And now you've got to divide that into 20. 20 divided by the square root of 6 is the same as saying 20 multiplied by 1 over the square root of 6. So what I would do now is I would press the 1 over x button, and I get 0.4082. And now you can easily just multiply that by 20 equals, and you have 8.1650. And one has to divide that into the difference between 8 and 5, which is the same as multiplying by 1 over that number. So I'd turn it 1 over x again, press 1 over x, and I've got 0.1225 on my screen. And now you can say multiplied by, and you can either say opening brackets 8 minus 5 closing brackets, or if one's prepared to do it in one's head, just multiply by 3. And the answer comes out at 0.3674. Would you like to just clear your screens and try that again yourself and see if you get to that same answer?
And just if everyone could just put their hand up once they've come to the answer and we're ready to move on, just so we know everyone's at the same place. Thanks, Will.
Should we move on?
Yeah, I think ready to move on now, Peter?
Great. Right, so my next point would be that in the text you see lots of formulas, and the text explains it in terms of the formula, but if you can do that on the calculator, there's no need to go learning some of those formulas off by heart. You might want to learn the one that we've just looked at, for example, the calculation of critical T, because that's a formula that you need to be able to commit to memory. But if you're trying to learn the formula for calculating an annuity, and you can use the time value of money buttons for that, then for heaven's sake, don't waste time just trying to learn the formula because it's in the text. A good example of this is the formula for standard deviation. Those of you who've done stats will know that standard deviation is the square root of the sum of the differences of the measurements against the mean squared, divided by either n if it's a population measurement, or n minus 1 if it's a sample measurement. But the calculator can do this very nicely for you. So let's take an example here. Make sure your screens are cleared. And if the HP people don't mind just waiting for a moment, I'll show the Texas people first how to do this. So this is data that you're going to input. Let's say these 5 measurements represent the performance of 5 portfolio managers in a year. So one has given the clients a 5% return, the others 13, then minus 11, then 2, then 24. And we want to find the mean and the standard deviation of that performance. So we go to data, which is a second function. So on your Texas calculators, you press second function data. And there in front of you, you see X1. Now the calculator can actually input 2 lots of series of measurements at one time, but we're just going to stick with the X values. So start by putting in 5, and then remember to press enter. Then you've got an arrow up at the top there, which you can use to scroll down past Y1, because we're only doing 1 lot of series, to X2. X2, you put in 13, enter, scroll down twice, 11, plus minus, change the sign, enter, scroll down twice, 2, enter, and finally for X5, 24, enter. What I sometimes do is I just scroll up with my other arrow to check that I've put everything in correctly and that it's all been entered and saved. And then one can just go straight to the answer by pressing the stats function, which is button 8, but it's a second function. So second function 8 tells you that it's a linear relationship, and if you scroll down, n is 5, so there are 5 measurements. The mean of x is 6.6. The standard deviation of the sample is 13.0115, and the standard deviation, if it was a population, is a little bit smaller at 11.63. It's smaller because you're dividing by n instead of dividing by n minus 1 in the formula. So maybe those of you with the Texas instruments would just like to practice that again while I quickly explain to the HP people. On the Hewlett-Packard, the button that really counts for you is the Sigma Plus button, which you'll find down in the bottom right-hand corner. And we're going to input each of the numbers into that Sigma Plus function. So one starts with 5, Sigma Plus. Then 13, Sigma Plus. Then minus 11, Sigma Plus. Then 2, Sigma Plus. And finally 24, Sigma Plus. And you should have 5 on your screen now, which shows you that you've put 5 entries in. Now we're looking for the mean first of all, and just under the 0 button you've got a little blue mark there which says X with a bar on top of it, which means the mean of X. So to call up that, you press the G function, the blue button, and 0. And that will tell you that the mean of x is 6.6. And then to get the standard deviation, it's the button to the right of that. The dot button has a little s underneath that. And if you press G and S, you get to the standard deviation of a sample at 13.0115. So now here's the trick with the HP calculator. To get to the population standard deviation, you want to adjust for the fact that the HP calculator always divides by n minus 1. So it would take 5 minus 1 gives you 4. But if you want to get the population standard deviation, you want it to divide by n, in other words 5. So you have to add in a 6th variable. And by adding the mean as the 6th variable, you won't distort the overs and unders and the actual outcome. So the way to do it is this: recall the mean. So Gx is 6.6 and put that in sigma plus. And it now tells you that you've got 6 measurements. And if you now recall the standard deviation, you find it gives you 11.6379, which is the standard deviation of a population. So there's a good example of not really having to know the formula if you can do it properly on the calculator, and it saves you a huge amount of time compared to writing it all out long-handed and this, that, and the other.
Peter, just to interrupt at the moment, Mira asked a question. I sent it out to everyone, but just to reiterate it, that there are no formula sheets allowed into the exam or given out in the exam. And so all the formulas need to be learnt off by heart beforehand. So any sort of help that the calculator can give you and not having to spend that time to remember, even if it's just a few formulas, can be very beneficial.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you for that question. All right, here I'm just emphasizing again the importance of using the RCL button. Please, everybody, make use of that. It's very, very helpful indeed. It gives you confidence, saves you time, saves you starting all over again and making the same mistake. It's not a button to be ignored. And then I make this point about seeing if you can do your calculations without writing anything down anywhere. If you have to write down, especially where there are fractions involved, you may lose accuracy. It takes you time. You may have to input them a second and a third time if you make a mistake. Whereas if you store those things in the memory buttons, either 0 or from 0 right the way up to 9, just by pressing STO and whatever memory button you want to put it into, you can develop a method of saving all those important midstream calculations that you need to complete your formula without having to write it down and regurgitate it and input it again and again. Saves you time, saves you or avoids inaccuracy. Right, well, I hope that those calculator tips will be very useful, and please, if we can help in any way, get in touch with us. If you're struggling with your calculator, perhaps we can show you in a nice, quick way how to solve any problems you might be having. Last couple of tips. First one, don't give up. Even up till the last day of the exam, you've got a chance of getting through. And my next comment here is something that I hope all of you, will take note of, is that no matter what it takes you to get through the exam, you must make sure that at the end of that day, you've left everything you possibly can inside that hall. That from 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, your head must be crammed as full as possible with everything in that syllabus. It'll be interesting to you, those of you who haven't attempted the exam before, but when you go and sit down and look to your left and right, you'll find many empty seats. And there are quite a lot of people that register, prepare, do all the exercises, buy their calculators, and then just don't pitch up. So pitching up already gives you a bit of a start against others that haven't even been able to make it to the exam room. So push yourself right to the limit if you possibly can, because the cost of having to sit down again in front of your books, go through the syllabus again, check where things have changed, it's very frustrating, and it is much better to do absolutely everything that you can to get through the first time round. Secondly, I'd suggest that try and overcome the loneliness of studying on your own. There are over 100,000 people in the world who are trying to prepare for level 1 at any one time, and so you must be able to find a buddy to help you. Well, there are various ways of doing that. At Johannesburg School of Finance, as you probably know, we run various workshops, and we'd love you to attend those. You don't have to, though, but one of the advantages is that people form study groups amongst themselves. They make friends, they are able to give each other emotional, and intellectual support, and many people enjoy the experience of preparing for CFA better by participating in study groups and workshops. If you are not able to attend the workshops because you don't live in either Johannesburg or Pretoria, which is, or Cape Town, I mean, where we run them, we're very happy to put you in touch with other people. So please don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll put you on an email list or whatever, and so you can join up with others who are in the same boat as yourself. We are hoping to run some more webinars in the future. This is our first sort of foray into this field, and if you've enjoyed this webinar, please give us some feedback, and that'll encourage us to design further programs for those of you who also aren't physically able to be at our workshops. And then I also do offer a consultation option, which you can find on our website. It invites people who want to get in direct touch with me. So you can ask me any question related to the syllabus via email, and I can hopefully give you an answer in a very short space of time that will save you a lot of frustration and hassle and get you straight to the point. So if you feel that you either don't want to or not able to attend the workshops, but you nevertheless would like some contact with me, there is that option.